are still thinking of the possibility of plant communication. For example, within the same bush of the evening primrose, there is one flower exposed directly.
They don't have mouths or brains. Yet across the planet, plants are letting out faint sounds, sending signals, and quietly shaping the world around them.
But it did develop the ability to respond to the sound of a pollinator, and then to differentiate between a pollinator and a non-pollinator. And that makes sense also.
For thousands of years, their voices went unnoticed until artificial intelligence started listening. What it uncovered wasn't just noise or motion. It revealed a vast hidden intelligence that's been alive and communicating all around us the entire time. The secret sounds of plants. Contrary to what we've always believed, plants are not quiet at all. When they're thirsty, cut, or under stress, they make sounds, real ones, only too high-pitched for human ears to hear. Humans can detect sound up to about 20 kilohertz. Plants, when stressed, click at 40 to 80 kilohertz, well above what we can hear, but well within the range of dogs, mice, bats, and insects. Those clicks aren't random static, they're tiny pops that burst through the air when something inside the plant goes wrong. At Tel Aviv University, a team of scientists set up a simple but brilliant experiment to prove it. They placed several kinds of plants, tomato, tobacco, wheat, corn, cacti, and henbit, into two environments. One was a completely silent, soundproof box. The other was a normal working greenhouse full of everyday background noise. Then they placed ultra-sensitive microphones, able to pick up sounds between 20 and 250 kilohertz, about 4 inches from each stem, and let them listen for hours. The results were astonishing. Every plant in the test made noise, but not all the time. The difference came down to stress. Healthy, well-watered plants barely made a sound, maybe one faint click an hour. But when the plants were cut or left without water, the microphones went crazy. Stressed plants fired off dozens of pops every hour, each one a cry from the inside that we could never hear. So what exactly is happening inside them? Think of a plant's body like a living plumbing system. It's full of microscopic pipes called xylem that move water up from the roots to the leaves. When a plant gets too dry or is injured, those water columns can snap, creating tiny air bubbles. When those bubbles form or collapse, they vibrate, and that vibration travels through the air as a tiny pop. Scientists call it cavitation. Researchers have known about cavitation for years, but they usually detected it using contact sensors attached to stems. The big discovery here is that those pops don't just stay inside the plant. They travel through the air where microphones can record them. But the team didn't stop at recording. They trained artificial intelligence models to recognize patterns in those pops. Dehydration, cutting, and normal growth all produce slightly different sound signatures. The computers learned those fingerprints. Soon they could tell not only whether a plant was in trouble, but also what kind of trouble it was in, and even how severe it was. And it worked surprisingly well. Even in the noisy greenhouse, the models could tell a thirsty plant from a freshly cut one. It could even tell the difference between species. Tomato clicks don't sound like tobacco clicks.
Researchers have discovered that sounds made by plants can be heard by some animals and insects, though they are outside the range of human hearing.
The pattern recognition accuracy in some trials reached around 70%. Remarkable considering these clicks are happening far beyond what we can hear. In terms of strength, those pops are about as loud as a normal human conversation, which means small animals like mice, moths, or bats could easily pick them up from 10 to 16 feet away, and in nature they might actually do that. One recent study showed that female moths avoided laying eggs on dehydrated tomato plants after hearing those ultrasonic clicks. In other words, insects might already be using this hidden layer of sound to make choices in their environment, something humans are only now beginning to notice. So why does this matter to us? Because the sounds happen early. Long before leaves droop or change color, the pops start firing. That means a farmer could, in theory, know days ahead of time which plants are getting stressed, long before they visibly show it. That's game-changing for agriculture. Farming takes up about 70% of all the freshwater humans use. Every gallon matters, and droughts are hitting harder every year. If you could listen to crops and water, only the ones asking for help, you'd save water, save power, and protect yields. The technology can run on battery-powered sensors that take short recordings and sleep between checks. The data could stream straight to a phone or tablet. Farmers could train their own models over time, fine-tuning them to the specific noises of their crops, their soil, and their climate, like a smart assistant learning a voice. For humans, this discovery is an opportunity. Imagine drone-mounted microphones scanning fields for drought stress. Imagine using this tech in reforestation projects to track how young trees handle dry seasons, or in city landscaping to save water without killing trees. Even NASA could use it in space agriculture one day, monitoring crops in lunar or Martian greenhouses where every drop of water is priceless. Of course, there are challenges. Sound doesn't travel perfectly. Wind can distort high frequencies, and some crops are naturally quieter than others. A field under the hot sun is much harder to monitor than a closed greenhouse. But researchers say you don't need a complicated array to start. Just a single good microphone and a simple setup can capture the effect if it's placed close enough. Those clicks and cries tell one story, but underground, a whole different kind of communication is happening. How trees secretly talk underground. Beneath your feet, the ground isn't quiet. It's packed with a hidden web of life so fine you could stack dozens of its threads across a single grain of sand. Those threads belong to fungi, and together they form an underground network that links the roots of different plants like nature's slow-motion internet.
Their function is to produce dust-like spores, which are then blown away through the woodland to grow elsewhere.
Scientists call it a mycorrhizal network, but it's really a trade route, a living marketplace where plants and fungi swap what they each need to survive. Fungi can reach places roots can't. Deep cracks, tiny pores, and microscopic pockets of soil where minerals and nutrients get trapped. They dissolve those minerals, pick up water, and deliver it to the plant. In return, the plant pays in sugar made through photosynthesis. When the same fungus connects two or more plants, it becomes a courier, able to move more than just water or minerals, sometimes even carbon, nitrogen, or chemical messages that help one plant sense what's happening to another. Think of it like a set of shared pipes underground. Not every plant is connected, and not every connection stays active. But when the link is there, one plant's experience can influence another's. Take tomatoes, for example. When a tomato plant gets attacked by pests, it starts pumping out defensive chemicals, making its leaves tougher, its taste bitter, and its smell a warning. In controlled experiments, when a healthy tomato was connected to an attacked one through a shared fungus, it started preparing defenses before anything touched it. It didn't see the pest, didn't smell it, but the message arrived underground. A follow-up study found that the untouched plants even boosted specific defense genes and enzymes, which made them harder for insects to chew. When researchers timed how long it took for one attacked plant to trigger a reaction in a connected neighbor, the response came within hours, not weeks or days, and that warning signal only appeared when the fungal bridge was intact. Remove the fungus, and the communication stopped cold. That tells us the fungus wasn't just helping both plants survive.
That those threads are essential for the growth and health of many of the woodland plants.
It was the messenger itself. The network also seems to help plants endure tough times. When drought hits or salt builds up in the soil, plants linked with fungi tend to hold up better. Some of that strength comes from better nutrition, but some comes from what scientists call priming. That's when a plant stays slightly on alert, ready to react faster when stress strikes. Tomatoes partnered with arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, for instance, show tougher growth in dry or salty conditions. They regulate water more efficiently and activate stress response genes sooner. Over and over, experiments showed that this partnership tilts the odds of survival in a plant's favor when things get rough. But here's where it's important to keep perspective. Over the years, stories have popped up about mother trees feeding their young through fungal networks, giant forest elders nurturing their seedlings like parents. It paints a nice picture, but the data so far doesn't quite live up to it. In 2023, a detailed review looked at dozens of studies and found mixed evidence for large-scale resource sharing in wild forests. Another review came to the same conclusion.
Naturalists thought of mushrooms as a type of mysterious plant that didn't need sunlight.
Yes, fungi connect trees, but claims about forests acting like one big family are ahead of the evidence. The truth is more interesting. The network works sometimes under the right mix of species, soil, and conditions. Some plants benefit, some don't. Some fungi are generous couriers, others hoard what they collect. It's not a grand, peaceful commune. It's a marketplace where everyone's trading, competing, and looking out for themselves. And competition underground can get brutal. Take the black walnut tree, nature's quiet street fighter. Its roots, leaves, and even the shells of its nuts release a chemical called juglone, a natural herbicide that can stunt or kill other plants nearby. Plant tomatoes, peonies, or petunias too close to a mature walnut, and they often turn yellow and wilt, even if the soil and water seem fine. The invisible culprit is juglone, leaking from fallen leaves and roots into the soil. How far can it reach? Usually about 50 to 60 feet from the trunk, roughly the spread of the tree's roots. Beyond that, microbes and oxygen break the compound down. Juglone behaves differently depending on soil type and weather. In wet, compacted soil, it lingers longer. In loose, well-aerated soil, microbes destroy it faster. That's why two gardens with the same kind of tree can look completely different. One a graveyard for flowers, the other thriving under careful mulch and airflow. The chemical isn't evil, it's a strategy. The walnut tree doesn't hate other plants. It just fights for survival like everything else in crowded soil. And it's not alone. Other plants use similar tricks, though less dramatically. Sunflowers, rye, sorghum, and even some grasses release compounds that slow down competitors. These chemicals are known as allelopathic agents. They're the quiet weapons plants use to carve out space, claim sunlight, and reduce competition for nutrients. When you think about it, this underground world is a mix of teamwork and turf wars. Fungal threads weave trade routes between roots, sharing resources and alerts. At the same time, roots and leaves leak defensive chemicals to push rivals back.
They have discovered that plants without chlorophyll, such as the fungi, cannot make food for themselves.
In one season, a young plant might benefit from a fungal bridge. In the next, it could suffer from the chemistry left behind by another species. We've seen how roots trade and compete underground. Now it's time to see how the signals move within the plant itself. The electric life of plants. Inside every plant, there's an invisible conversation taking place, not in words or thoughts, but in pulses of electricity. Each time something touches a leaf, cuts the stem, or chills the air, a faint wave ripples through the plant's body. You can't hear it or see it, but if you attach tiny electrodes, the same kind used in a hospital heart monitor.
My part of the collaboration involves recording the tiny vibrations produced by the caterpillars as they're feeding.
Those signals come to life on a screen. You'd see the voltage rise, fall, and move like a slow heartbeat. These are electrical messages passing through living tissue, and they travel fast enough to warn the whole plant that something just happened. Researchers call them by a few names. Action potentials are quick little spikes, the plant's reaction to things like a tap, a light breeze, or a sudden chill. Variation potentials move more slowly and happen after something serious, like being cut or burned. Then there are system potentials, long waves linked to chemical shifts that spread more gradually through the body. Together they form a simple communication system that keeps the plant aware of its surroundings. If you snip a leaf from a connected stem, the pulse doesn't stop there. It jumps to the next leaf, then another, triggering defense genes as it travels. One of the main messengers in this process is calcium. When a leaf is wounded, it releases a burst of glutamate, the same amino acid that also acts as a neurotransmitter in animals. That signal opens calcium channels inside nearby cells, letting calcium ions rush in and start a wave that races across the plant. Within minutes, distant leaves begin producing defensive compounds, thickening their chemistry before the next bite or bruise. That speed depends on the species and the situation. A wound-driven signal might crawl along at a few millimeters per second, slow compared to animal nerves, but quick enough to prepare the next leaf before an insect finishes chewing. In fast-moving species, those action potentials zip through at several inches per second, turning touch into instant motion. Plants also respond to vibrations. the faint tremors that ripple through a leaf when something presses or eats it. In one clever experiment, researchers recorded the exact vibration made by a caterpillar chewing on a leaf. They then attached a tiny speaker to another plant's leaf and played that same chewing pattern back. When real caterpillars arrived later, those primed plants were ready. They produced stronger defensive chemicals and made life harder for the new attackers. The amazing part? Random sounds, like the wind or insect buzzes, didn't have the same effect. The plants could tell the difference between real danger and harmless background noise. That sensitivity doesn't mean plants are conscious or thinking, but it does show they can learn what to ignore. The perfect example is the sensitive plant Mimosa pudica, the one whose leaves fold up when touched. In one experiment, researchers gently dropped potted mimosa plants onto soft foam again and again. At first, every drop made the leaves snap shut, but after many repeats, the plants stopped reacting.
What do we get? We get a beautiful action potential. However, the fly trap doesn't close.
They'd figured out the fall wasn't harmful. When they were touched in a new way later, the leaves closed again immediately, proving the plants weren't tired or broken. They'd simply learned what didn't matter.
It also opens the window of plant behavior just a little wider. So we see that.
That's called habituation, the same process that makes people stop noticing a constant hum in the background. And that same sense of recognition extends below ground. Plants can tell who their neighbors are, friend or stranger, using chemistry alone. Their roots leak a soup of compounds called exudates, and nearby plants read that soup like a scent trail. In one study with a coastal plant called sea rocket, individuals grown beside their siblings built fewer roots than those next to unrelated plants. They seemed to ease off the underground competition when surrounded by family. Another experiment with Arabidopsis seedlings showed the same thing. When exposed to root exudates from unrelated plants, they grew extra side roots to fight for space. But when the exudates came from their own kind, they didn't bother. It's becoming clear that plants remember things, even without a brain, and that idea has fueled a lot of rumors. There are wild claims that plants can recognize specific people by footsteps, or that they panic when a certain person walks into the room. None of that has been proven. To test an idea like that properly, scientists would have to randomize who enters, mask smells, record both the footsteps and the plant's voltage changes, and analyze the data blindly, so no one knows who walked in until after. Then they'd have to repeat it across different rooms, species, and seasons. Until that kind of evidence exists, the safe ground is what's real and measurable. Plants absolutely fire electrical pulses, feel touch and vibration, and change behavior after repeated harmless cues. That alone is extraordinary enough.
We've known for some time that plants can respond to single vibrations or to music, but we haven't known why they do that.
Now, artificial intelligence is taking that ability to a whole new level. Imagine building a digital library that pairs every stimulus, touch, cut, cold mist, insect bite, with its matching electrical and vibration patterns. Feed those labeled examples into a machine learning model, and it can begin recognizing what kind of event caused a signal it's never seen before. Instead of guessing, it can say, "This pattern looks like a mild chill," or "This one matches the signature of a fresh wound." The goal is to build consistent tools for interpreting their electrical behavior. Once data sets are shared across research teams, everyone can test their own species, compare reactions, and push the science forward together. So, how long do these memories last? That depends on the trigger. A quick voltage spike fades in seconds. A chemical shift might last hours. A learned habit, like mimosa ignoring a drop, can persist for days. Underground cues can shape a plant's growth for weeks or an entire season. All of this might sound like too much complexity for something rooted in one place. But think about the job plants have. They can't walk away from danger, they can't go looking for food or shelter, so they've built defenses that act instantly. Those quick electrical pulses stay inside the plant, but what plants release into the air is a whole different story. How plants shape the sky. Every leaf, every blade of grass, every pine needle is constantly exhaling invisible chemistry that drifts up, reacts with sunlight, and begins to reshape the sky itself. The main players are called biogenic volatile organic compounds, or BVOCs for short. Sounds complicated, but it just means plant-made vapors. You've smelled them before. Walk through a pine forest on a hot day, and that sharp, fresh scent filling the air is monoterpenes leaking out of needles. A meadow after rain. That sweetness is another mix of plant vapors rising into the air. These gases might seem harmless, but once they escape the leaf, they start doing something extraordinary. They don't simply vanish, they react. Sunlight and oxygen begin to twist their chemistry, turning light gases into heavier compounds that clump together into tiny specks of matter. Those specks, called aerosols, are the seed crystals for clouds. More particles mean more droplets. More droplets change how bright a cloud looks, how long it lasts, and even how much sunlight bounces back into space. Warm months are like a full-time shift for the world's green factories. Satellite and field data show how quickly these compounds rise, react, and change particle counts in the air. It's the reason mountain ranges sometimes shimmer under a soft blue haze. That's sunlight scattering off plant-borne particles. Temperature is the volume knob. When the heat rises, many trees exhale more monoterpenes, changing the mix of gases in the air. But not all trees react the same way. Early models once assumed that every forest followed one simple rule: hotter days, more emissions. Real measurements proved otherwise. The sensitivity shifts with the type of forest, the level of stress, and the local chemistry. A few degrees of warming can swing how much vapor a forest breathes out, which in turn shifts how many cloud seeds the sky gets. Heavier compounds called sesquiterpenes are part of the story too. They don't survive long once released, but while they last, they're fierce builders of those microscopic particles. A recent global review pulled data from 20 years of studies and found that these heavier molecules are responding differently to heat now than they used to. Environmental stress changes how much of them plants release, and that ripple affects both haze and ozone chemistry across entire regions.
And then begin to produce the liquid from the surface of the leaf, which will dissolve the body.
And nature rarely deals stress one at a time. Out in the wild, trees face heat, drought, and air pollution all at once. When scientists ran controlled tests exposing plants to heat waves and ozone spikes, they saw the chemistry twist in unpredictable ways. Heat alone pushed out more vapors. Ozone alone sometimes slowed them down. Put both together, and the result wasn't a simple sum. The chemical fingerprint of the leaves completely changed, altering how much haze or ozone the air could make. To capture that messy reality, newer models use smarter math and even machine learning systems that can recognize patterns across different forests. But plant chemistry doesn't stop at the clouds. It reaches straight into our lungs. Rising carbon dioxide and higher temperatures change how plants grow and, in turn, how much pollen they release. Experiments with common ragweed showed that when carbon dioxide levels were boosted, the plants produced several times more pollen and started releasing it earlier. Warming only adds to the effect, stretching the pollen season and raising counts across entire regions. These trends aren't abstract. They're measurable in every sneeze, every watery eye, and every night you can't breathe through your nose. City air makes it worse. Pollution roughens the surface of pollen grains, cracks their shells, and binds allergens to fine particles that sink deeper into the lungs. Exhaust fumes and gases like nitrogen oxides and ozone damage pollen and make our immune systems more reactive, worsening allergic responses. Some studies even show that nitrogen pollution itself can boost pollen production. So while plants aren't deliberately targeting us, the atmosphere we've altered is hitting back, giving us longer, harsher allergy seasons than ever before. And while that's happening above ground, another kind of connection is taking shape below and between plants. Meet dodder, a thin, thread-like parasitic vine that wraps itself around other plants and taps directly into their veins. Through that living bridge, dodder can move molecular messages, from messenger RNAs and tiny regulatory RNAs to full-blown plant viruses, from one species to another. It's a biological courier system. Those small RNA molecules can silence genes across the connection, changing how the host behaves. The same bridge can also transmit bacteria, including the one behind the citrus greening disease that devastates orchards. Researchers even use dodder in labs as a living tool to transfer hard-to-grow pathogens between plants. But this idea of connection doesn't stop with parasites. Even healthy plants can send tiny packets of information to their enemies. They use microscopic bubbles called extracellular vesicles, filled with RNA instructions, and deliver them straight into invading fungi. Inside those bubbles are genetic codes that shut down the fungus's attack genes, weakening its ability to infect. And it's not one way. Fungi and pathogens can fight back, sending their own RNA packets into the plant to disarm its defenses. Scientists call this cross-kingdom RNA interference. Even when humans interfere, the system keeps working. When a fruiting stem is grafted onto a tougher rootstock, some RNA messages can cross the graft line. Certain molecular tags help those signals travel between both halves, affecting growth and even resistance. Researchers are still sorting out which messages truly move and which early results were noise, but one thing is clear. Plants can send information molecules through living connections. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos popping up on screen for more unbelievable stories.